So in this unit, or in this video, I'm going to go over the review problems from the back of the review packet on unit analysis. So the first says convert your height in feet to centimeters. So it's going to be a little bit different for everybody, but let's just use if you're 5 feet 6 inches, that means you're 5.5 feet tall. So you always write down the number first. So we have 5.5 feet, right? And we want to go from feet to centimeters, okay? So I assume that everybody knows how many inches are in a foot, so that would be the first conversion factor. So we multiply by a fraction, and on the bottom I want feet to cancel, and on the top I want to go 2 inches, so I'm going to put the inches there. So I put 12 inches on top and 1 foot on the bottom. All right, so feet cancel. Now, remember that this is really on the top of a fraction. Some people like to write this over 1 just to make themselves see it a little bit better. And I noticed that a lot of times kids write it down here and they get confused about what's canceling. But remember, this is always, whatever that number is over 1. So I have the first conversion factor now. I just need to go from inches to centimeters, which I don't really expect you to know off the top of your head, so I've provided it for you. So 1 inch would go on the bottom so that my inch is canceled, and 2.54 centimeters would go on the top. So in order to plug it into my calculator, I always start by punching in the number I'm given at the beginning, so 5.5, and then work my way from left to right and multiply by the number if it's on the top, divide if it's on the bottom, and then ignore if it's 1. So I'm just going to take 5.5 and multiply it by 12, and then multiply by 2.54, and I get 167.64 centimeters. Now the next one says, how many minutes are in a decade? So in 1 decade. So the number that I'm given is 1 decade. So my first conversion is going to go from decades to years. So I know that 1 decade is actually 10 years. So decades would cancel. The next is to go from years to days, and this is actually a typo right there. It's actually 365.25. So I would say 1 year is 365.25 days. And the 0.25 comes from leap year, so every 4 years we have an extra day, right? And then I want to go from days to hours. So 1 day on the top to get this day to cancel. And I know that 1 day is 24 hours. And then hours to minutes. So 1 hour on the bottom is 60 minutes. Right? Then if I just punch it in again for this one, I also still have all my numbers on the top. So I just do 1 times 10 times 365.25 times 24 times 60, and I get this big number, which is a large enough number that I probably should write it in scientific notation. So I'm actually going to hit second 5, and it'll put it into scientific notation for me. So roughly 5.3 times 10 to the 6. So 5.3 times 10 to the 6 minutes. Right? Now, a lot of times when people do things in scientific notation, they miss this little exponent over there. So always keep your eyes peeled for it. We'll see that in the next one. Sometimes it will miss what's over here. All right, so in the last one, there's a few different ways of doing this just because we have multiple conversion factors up here. But I'll just go ahead and start with, I want to know how many kilometers are in 9.8 times 10 to the 13 feet. So I'm going to put 9.8 times 10 to the 13 feet first. And I'm going to actually go from feet to miles, and then miles to meters, and meters to kilometers. All right? But again, there's a little bit different ways you can do this. So I want feet to cancel, so I'm going to put the feet on the bottom, 5,280 feet. And on the top, I will put 1 mile, so my feet cancel. Then I'm going from miles to meters. So 1 mile is 1,600 meters. 5 miles will cancel. And then I want to go from meters to kilometers. Note that that conversion factor isn't up here because we have learned about the metric system in this unit. So you should know how to make that conversion. And you will be expected to know how to make that conversion using unit analysis on the test, and I will not provide it to you. So we should know that there are 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. So the meters will cancel. And again, we just have to first type in the number on the left. So it's a number in scientific notation, so depending on your calculator, the EE button is what we're going to use. If you have a graphing calculator, I think you have to hit second EE. Here it's just there for us. And then we put in the exponent, which is 13. And then I'm going to work my way from left to right. Let me move this up here so you can see it. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide by 5,280 because it's on the bottom. And then I'm going to multiply it by 1,600 because it's on the top. And then I'm going to divide by 1,000. And I get this. And this is typically where people miss this because it's a big, long decimal and they forget to look over here to the right to see that 10. And I'm just going to round it. So usually 2 decimals is reasonable for me. So 2.97 times 10 to the 10th, and that would be kilometers. All right. So hopefully that's a good review of unit analysis, and you'll be ready to do that on your test tomorrow.